Hi friends, Scalar 3 has been a hot topic since it was released last week. I made a video on the subject and it got a lot of views. If you'd like to see that video, there's a link up above and in the description. One of the comments I got from more than one person was, can you add drums into Scalar 3? And I thought, I think you can. There's a couple different ways you could do it. The standard, or orthodox way, is to actually add your drums into your DAW and then synchronize Scalar 3 with your DAW. So when you play the melodic chords and the tracks that you've added into the arrange window, they sync up with the drums. But there's another way to do it, which I would call a little unorthodox. If you go to the arrange page, you can actually insert a drum app as a plugin, and you can program the Midi in the Midi editor. In this video, I'm going to go over both methods, show you how they work, and then you can make a choice of whether it makes sense to add drums into your Scalar 3 project. Like all my videos, I try to address something different, something that the rest of the videos aren't covering. And I've organized it into chapters. So if you want to jump around from section to section, be my guest. I also have affiliate links for all the products that are included in this video. Some of them are offered at a discount. So if you're considering buying Scalar 3 or one of the other products, I get a very small commission and you help out the channel. I'm going to show you the standard way with DAW integration, and then I'm going to show you the unorthodox way right away. I'm in Scalar, I picked some chords, I went through artists, found Evil 9, and I came up with these chords. It ended up being a 16-bar pattern, and I'm using the internal sound with Scalar called soft piano. Then I went over to the arrange page, and this is where you can create multiple tracks. Track 1 has my chord progression in it. I added a bass line. I'll let you hear that. I was pretty happy with that, so I added another phrase which plays the instrument acoustic guitar. So everything looks pretty normal up to this point. I've used all melodic instruments for tracks 1, 2, and 3. But on this one, called Arpeggio, and ignore the name for now, and I'll explain why you can't easily change the name, I brought in some Midi that came along with Arpeggio, and then I opened it in the Midi editor, and I deleted all the Midi, and I created my own using the pencil and the pointer. And here's why. If you look at the mixer, I've assigned arpeggio to play beat, and this was done by choosing instruments, manufacturer actually, and I scrolled down to audio modern, and there was play beat 4 as an audio unit. So I'm selecting one of the plugins that was scanned initially when I installed Scalar 3, and it is a drum machine. So now the challenge was finding out what do those notes sound like. I knew that the notes were assigned from MIDI C1 up to about C2. And that's what all these little red dots are. Let's make this a little bit more visible for you. So if I click on the pencil and I click on any of these MIDI notes, I'm going to hear something. It's playing the sound of the note that's assigned to that MIDI note in playbeat. If I just put that on solo, you'll hear I've created a drum pattern the hard way. And I say the hard way because there's no way of importing a MIDI pattern with the Midi editor that's built into Scalar. It's unfortunate, maybe they'll add that feature later, but at the moment you can only build that pattern manually using the pencil, icons, and the features. You can't even really cut and paste. So how does that all sound together? Okay, I've got 4 tracks in the arrange view, the chord progression, a bass line, and this phrases thing, and it'll play everything including the drums. Not the greatest drum pattern, but it gives you the idea. I am executing drums within the scalar arrange view. And as I've said, that's kind of the unorthodox way of doing it. You know, there's a lot of MIDI generation programs out there in the marketplace. I happen to feel that Scalar 3 is one of the best. Not just because of its composition capabilities, but because it houses all of music theory and harmony in this one tool. I use it as a reference all the time. Let's go back to the orthodox view of how this should be done. In my Logic project, I have Scalar on track 1 and I have Playbeat on track 2. Within Playbeat, I've selected a preset, this PB4 abstract clock. Play it in Logic. Okay, in this mode, I am using the sounds and the sequencer that's built into Playbeat. And within Scalar, if I just press the spacebar, it'll play the Scalar melodic tracks at the same time that it's playing Playbeat. So the concept here is that everything rhythmic or everything additional that you want to add to Scalar, you put in your DAW. One reason is that those rhythmic tracks do not depend upon the chord sequence. If I was to make changes to this chord sequence, change a chord or rearrange the chords, all these melodic tracks would adjust accordingly. But if I had dragged the MIDI into Logic, it no longer depends upon the scalar chord progression. I've now committed the MIDI into my DAW. And you can have multiple tracks within your DAW. So you could have a drum track, you could have a percussion track, you could have some additional melodic tracks. They just won't follow the chord progression. So you can build everything out within your DAW. And you have this scenario where you've got the melodic sounds coming from Scalar 3, and you've got the rhythmic sounds, and they are in sync by syncing your DAW to Scalar. Okay, let's go back to this unorthodox approach, and I'll lead you through the process because it might not have been clear the first time. Well, whenever you add a track, it asks you to add some kind of motion, which is kind of annoying. So what I did is I picked a really simple rhythm under common rhythms. You see, these are just whole notes. So I picked this. By going into the MIDI editor, it had all these notes that I don't want. So I selected those notes and deleted them. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to have it play drums. So by default, that rhythm selected felt piano, but I want a different instrument. So I'm going to go to Manufacturer, scroll down until I see Gorham Grooves. There it is. And I'm going to select the Power Rock kit. And I've got a choice. I can select the audio unit, a VST, or a VST3. I'm just going to go with the audio unit. It loads the instrument. If you haven't seen handy drums before, this is kind of what it looks like. And all of the sounds, of which there are, 16, 20 sounds, are assigned to a particular MIDI note. Usually starts with C1. Go back into the MIDI editor. Remember, this is the unorthodox method, but it does work. And I'm going to pick some notes so we can hear what they sound like. There's C1, obviously a kick. No, it sounds like a rim shot. There we go. Snare looks like it's on. I'm going to add that to 3. And I'm just creating a pattern. We can get fancy with this later. I'll just go with a really basic kick. My kick will be on 1. So on the hi-hat, I'm going to go with a bunch of notes. So this gives you an idea of what has been added. Not the best pattern. So, proof you can add the drums into Scalar 3. It's not easy, it's not pretty. It's a bit tedious creating the patterns because you can't import patterns. In the long run, what we want to see is that there will be some capability to add drum patterns into the Midi library. When you add a track into the arrange window, it first asks you for a motion, which is the Midi pattern. If it would let you bring in those user patterns, that would kind of solve the problem, right? But there's no options within this motions pop-up to drag your own patterns into Scalar 3. Now, one of the things you might wrestle with is that Scalar was really designed around using chord progressions in your songwriting effort. So all the other tracks that you add are keyed off of that chord progression, and they're all melodic. They could be bass parts, they could be guitar parts, they could be synth parts, but they all leverage that chord progression in such a way that if you change the chord progression, they all adjust accordingly. Now, when you consider adding drums, you're kind of pushing Scalar 3 into the direction of a full DAW. And you have to evaluate whether that's the right way to go. Oh, here's something I just noticed. Can you have more than one drum pattern? Of course. Can you have more than one rhythmic instrument, like percussion plus drums? Sure. So right now I've got both the Playbeat 4 unmuted and the Gorham Grooves drums unmuted. Is there a limit? I'm not sure. There might be a limit to the number of tracks you can have in the arrange window in Scalar. That would be the only limit. But every time you're loading another plugin, another virtual instrument that has been scanned, of course it's going to use up more memory. It's going to take up more space. If you found this video interesting or helpful or insightful, click on the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. If you have questions, comments, or ideas, make sure you put them in. I try to address every comment. And thanks for watching.